Welcome on board, Chosen One. Step in, wipe your feet on the remains of everything they tried to use against you, and breathe for a second. The universe really dropped you right into the scene they never wanted you to walk into. Funny how that works. They swore you'd stay blind forever, walking around like you couldn't feel the eyes on your back or the nervous shuffle every time your name came up. They said you'd never notice who was lurking in the shadows, pretending to be unbothered. They said you'd crumble, fold, break, whatever weak fantasy kept them warm at night. Look who was wrong. Look who's shaking now. The moment you lifted your head and actually saw them watching, something inside their little world snapped. And then you smiled. Not the polite kind, not the scared kind, the I caught you kind. The kind that hits like a spotlight in a thief's face. And that's when the atmosphere changed. You felt it, right? The air tightened. The silence went weird. It wasn't imagination. It was a malfunction. Your smile triggered a protocol that was never supposed to activate. You were never meant to be aware. You were never supposed to break their illusion, but here you are making their whole operation glitch with one tiny expression. Before we go deeper, hit the like button and subscribe. Strengthen this message, feed the signal, keep this channel alive for the ones who need it next. Now, let's tear open the truth they hoped you'd never hear. For the longest time, you thought you were walking through life unnoticed. Meanwhile, behind your back, they ran entire group chats about you, rehearsed insults to throw at you, practiced looking bored whenever you entered the room. They tried so hard to be the storm in your story that they didn't realize you were becoming the aftermath. That quiet, terrifying calm that forces everyone to reckon with what survived and what didn't. And guess who didn't survive? Their pride, their lies, their confidence. All of it disintegrated the moment you stopped shrinking and started observing. There's this part they'll never admit. They studied you more than they studied their own lives. You became their obsession. The why do they shine like that case study? The why doesn't anything break them mystery folder buried on their mental desktop. And every time you walked away without reacting, you fed their paranoia. You want the real gag? They wanted your downfall so badly that they forgot to build their own rise. They wasted so much energy hoping you'd trip that they didn't notice you were building a whole empire in silence. You remember those moments when you felt alone, confused, isolated, like the universe had ghosted you. That was the training ground. That's the part of the story no one talks about because it's the part where the chosen ones almost quit. That quiet season where everything hurt and nothing made sense. Where you'd give everything to someone and they'd walk away like you meant nothing. Where you'd pour kindness into people who treated your presence like background noise. That wasn't weakness. That was sharpening. The universe was removing anyone too small-minded to handle what you were becoming. And now look at the timeline. The same people who dismissed you are suddenly twitching every time you breathe. The same ones who thought you were harmless are now whispering about your change, your glow, your shift. They swear you're different, but deep down they know the truth. You didn't change. You just stopped apologizing for who you already were. Let me tell you something they'll never want spoken out loud. Their biggest fear wasn't you failing. It was you waking up. It was you seeing your own power with your own eyes instead of through their dusty opinions. They built entire personalities out of trying to keep you small. They needed you insecure. They needed you unsure because your clarity is their collapse. Your awareness exposes everything. And that smile, that one simple moment where you acknowledge the watchers, that was the universe flipping the page. There's an old story that fits too perfectly to ignore. A kid who grew up being laughed at, ignored, underestimated. People treated him like a joke, like he'd never amount to anything. One day, he stopped caring about the noise and focused entirely on becoming dangerous in silence. Years later, he walked back into the same rooms, not for revenge, but simply because he existed, and the same people who mocked him couldn't even look him in the eyes. Not because he threatened them, but because his existence exposed the truth. They were wrong the whole time. You're walking into that same energy now. The aftermath, the shift, the moment the watchers become the watched. That's why the air feels different around you. That's why people act weird. You're the glitch that rewrote the system. You weren't supposed to notice them watching. You weren't supposed to smile like that. You weren't supposed to rise this fast. But you did, and it's too late for them now. The protocol has already failed. The chosen one is awake. Before we move forward, chosen one, lock in with me for a moment. You just stepped into a story you were never supposed to read. And trust me, the next chapters get even darker, sharper, and way more personal. If you're still here after realizing your smile broke their system, then yeah, you're exactly the kind of anomaly this message was built for. Drop a 777 in the comments to show you caught the signal. You sense the shift and you're staying locked into this mission. It's not about luck, it's about alignment. It's about proving to the universe that you're awake and aware even when they hoped you'd stay blind. And now let's sink deeper step by step into the truth they spent years hiding from you. Stay close because the ones who were never supposed to notice are the ones who end up rewriting the entire script. If you're a real chosen one, you'll feel that pull in your chest telling you to stay till the very end. That's not hype, that's recognition, that's the system trying and failing to pull you back into silence. Let's get started. Number 1. The tables just flipped and they weren't built for this level of humiliation. Funny how they spent years trying to break you. And all it took was one smile to break them. They thought they had you pinned like some quiet little lab rat wandering around, clueless, soft, predictable, easy to monitor. They stamped you with their cheap labels. Subject unaware, emotionally manageable, no threat detected, cute. They were so sure you'd stay in the role they cast you in that they didn't bother preparing for the possibility that you might outgrow the script. They didn't prepare for the moment you'd open your eyes. They didn't prepare for the moment you'd track their shadows, sense their presence, decode the tension in the air, and then have the audacity to smile. That smile didn't just annoy them. It humiliated them. It exposed them. It flipped the entire power system upside down like a chessboard knocked off the table by the very piece they thought wouldn't move. Because let's be honest, chosen one, you weren't supposed to notice anything. That was the plan. You were supposed to blend in, stay confused, stay apologetic, stay manageable. And every time you walked away from an insult without reacting, they mistook your silence for weakness. Every time you didn't respond to someone's fake energy, they convinced themselves you were too clueless to pick up on it. Every time you chose peace, they assumed it was because you were afraid of confrontation. They didn't know peace can be a weapon. They didn't know silence can be strategy. They didn't know patience can be a trap. Then there was that moment, that stupid little moment where you caught them watching. You felt the air shift. You felt the eyes, and instead of shrinking like they expected, you lifted your head locked onto the invisible line between you and them and smiled. And not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that says, I know exactly what you're doing, and it amuses me more than it scares me. You didn't flinch. They did. You didn't hide. They panicked. Your smile triggered a protocol because it broke the illusion. It broke the hierarchy. Suddenly, you weren't prey. Suddenly, you weren't silent. Suddenly, you weren't predictable. Suddenly, you were something the system had no category for. Here's the part that sends them into psychological freefall. You didn't just notice them watching. You started watching them watch you. You flipped the lens. You flipped the perspective. You turned their surveillance into your entertainment. Suddenly, every glancing eye, every whispered conversation, every awkward shift in their body language became data. You observed the observers, and nothing crushes an enemy faster than realizing their secret monitoring has become your open amusement. It's the equivalent of catching someone spying through the blinds and waving with a smirk, watching them yank the curtain closed like a guilty child. Let me break down why this shift in power hits so hard. They relied on your unawareness. That was their control. They felt big as long as you felt small. They felt strong as long as you felt unsure. They felt brave as long as you didn't look directly at them. They built their confidence on the hope that you'd never turn around and see what they were doing behind your back. Your smile didn't just expose them, it removed their power source. Because once the chosen one is aware, the whole game collapses. They're terrified right now, and you need to understand why. It's not because you're dangerous in the way they usually define it. It's because you're dangerous in a way they can't define at all. How do you categorize someone who refuses to break the way they expect? How do you classify someone who notices surveillance and finds it funny? How do you label someone who treats watches like a free comedy show? How do you manage someone who isn't scared of the shadows because they've learned to see in the dark? They don't have a file for that. They don't have a protocol for that. They don't have a strategy for someone like you. You shifted from being the one they evaluated to the one evaluating them. And the moment that shift happened, all their control fell apart like wet cardboard. Because here's the truth, no one ever bothered to tell them. The most unstoppable people in the world are the ones who survive their worst nights quietly. The ones who endure betrayal without losing their soul. The ones who understand their own pain so deeply that no external force can manipulate them anymore. Those are the people the universe turns into anomalies. Unbreakable, unpredictable, uncontrollable. Maybe you're wondering right now, why were they watching me in the first place? Why did they study me like that? Why did my smile shake them so hard? Here's why. They sensed your potential long before you did. They saw your glow before you saw your own reflection. They felt threatened by the strength you hadn't even tapped into yet. You were becoming something they couldn't compete with, and they panicked. So they tried to shrink you before the transformation completed. They tried to plant doubts in your mind. They tried to turn your confidence into confusion. They tried to keep you in a loop of overthinking so you'd never break into awareness. But you did. You became the exact thing they feared. Someone who sees the truth and laughs anyway. Someone who rises without permission. Someone who refuses to bow just because they expected you to. Their system wasn't built to handle someone like you. They thought your awareness would make you paranoid. Instead, it made you powerful. They thought catching them would make you crumble. Instead, it made you curious. They thought surveillance would intimidate you. Instead, it motivated you. And this is the part that really destroys them. Your rise isn't loud. It's quiet, calm, controlled. Nothing terrifies an enemy more than a chosen one who grows in silence, evolves in private, and returns with a smile that says, I saw everything. I just chose not to react. That's the shift in power. That's the glitch in their system. That's the reason they're spiraling now while you're leveling up. Because the moment the prey looks back at the predator without fear, the predator stops being a predator. The moment the observer becomes the observed, the hierarchy collapses. The moment the chosen one smiles at the surveillance, the entire protocol fails. You weren't supposed to notice them watching. You weren't supposed to smile like that. You weren't supposed to flip their system with nothing but awareness and amusement, but you did. And that's why you hold the power now. All of it, completely, unapologetically, permanently. Number 2, you kept receipts they never knew you were collecting. Wild how they swore you were clueless. Meanwhile, you were documenting every lie, every pattern, every fake coincidence like it was a research project. They really believed their little routines were invisible. The coordinated movements, the synchronized casual entrances, the way they'd stare just long enough to gather intel, but not long enough to get caught. They treated you like you were wandering through life with your eyes half closed, brain on airplane mode, soul on mute. Cute imagination they had because while they were busy pretending to be covert, you were busy keeping score like a villain sharpening their next move. Every glance they threw your way became evidence. Every fake coincidence became a data point. Every shift in their tone became a chapter in the file you never admitted you were building. They thought they were watching you. You were auditing them. Here's the part that burns them the most. You didn't learn their patterns last week. You didn't wake up enlightened by accident. You've been tracking them for months. You've clocked who appears when you change your morning routine. You've noticed which ones suddenly match your coffee orders like they're trying to blur the lines between coincidence and stalking. You've watched who magically develops the same interests as you. Same books, same podcasts, same late-night posts like they're trying to sync their identity with yours just to stay close enough to gather intel. They call it similar taste. You call it pattern replication. They call it coincidence. You call it surveillance dressed as F&M. Your smile wasn't improvisation. It wasn't random. It wasn't polite. It was calculated. It was the final punchline after months of quiet decoding. It was the smirk of somebody who has been collecting receipts while pretending not to notice a single thing. The smile said everything out loud without using a single word. I've been keeping score. I know who you are. I know what you're doing. And now I'm amused, not intimidated. Imagine being them in that moment watching Dashin, watching their whole operation glitch because the subject unaware has turned into the problem they can't contain. And you might be wondering right now, was I wrong for noticing? Am I imagining it? Did I read too much into the patterns? No, you weren't imagining anything. Pattern recognition is the chosen one's natural instinct. You survived betrayal, manipulation, fake kindness, and hidden agendas. Your intuition didn't just get stronger. It evolved. It became a radar. It became a scanner. It became your silent superpower. And the universe sharpened it until even the smallest shift in someone's behavior felt like a broadcast straight to your senses. Imagine this, a chess player who doesn't know they're a chess player until they realize every person around them has been studying their next move. Suddenly, The whole board becomes visible. Suddenly, the opponent's strategy collapses. That's you. That's what happened the moment you connected the dots. Imagine this. You're walking through a forest and you realize the trees are bending just slightly the moment you pass, like they've been tracking your steps the whole time. Creepy for them. Yes. For you, it's confirmation. Imagine this. You sit down in a cafe and within 5 minutes someone shows up ordering the exact drink they swore they hated 2 months ago. They think you're not paying attention. Meanwhile, you're noting the time stamp, the tone, the proximity, the shift in energy. You're observing the observers. Imagine this. Someone suddenly shares a new interest in a niche topic you've been exploring quietly. Too convenient, too timed, too neatly aligned. It's not admiration, it's mimicry. And mimicry always reveals obsession. That's why your smile destroyed them, because it wasn't a reaction. It was a revelation. It exposed that while they collected surface-level data on your life, you built psychological profiles on theirs. You mapped their triggers, their habits, their tells. You noticed who gets twitchy when you walk in the room. You noticed who adjusts their posture. You noticed who pretends not to see you, but angles their neck just enough to track you with peripheral vision. You noticed who suddenly shows up everywhere you go like a ghost with bad timing. You've kept score of every detail they hoped you'd overlook. Here are the quotes they deserve to choke on. One smile from you erased months of their pretending. You studied them silently while they bragged about studying you. They collected evidence. You collected motives. You were never the experiment. You were the spy hiding inside the test. Now, let's go deeper, because this is the part where the enemy starts sweating. The protocol they triggered, the one your smile set off. It was never meant to protect them from you. It was meant to protect them from what happens when someone like you becomes aware. When someone intelligent, intuitive, observant, patient, and emotionally resilient suddenly wakes up to how much people have been underestimating them. That protocol isn't about containment anymore. It's about damage control. They're scrambling to figure out what you know. They're replaying every interaction, panicking about what they said. They're wondering if you saw through every fake compliment, every fake coincidence, every forced smile. Spoiler, you did. Maybe another question is burning in your mind right now. Why did I start noticing everything all at once? Because awareness always hits in waves. You were too busy healing, growing, leveling up to care about their background noise. Then one day, the whole pattern snapped into focus like a puzzle finishing itself. You weren't looking for it. Your evolution activated it. When you rise, the shadows reveal themselves. When you glow, the observers step forward. When you level up, the system monitoring you glitches in panic. And here's what they never understood. Their movements weren't subtle. They were sloppy. They were repetitive. They were predictable. They thought they were controlling the narrative while accidentally handing you the entire blueprint. Every time they acted like you weren't the smartest person in the room, you quietly collected another point. Every time they underestimated your intelligence, you earned another advantage. Every time they thought you didn't notice, you noticed twice as much. You've been keeping score. You've been keeping track. You've been keeping receipts. And now they're the ones scrambling, because the moment a chosen one keeps score, the game stops being fair. Because the moment someone like you starts studying the Watchers lose their power. Because the moment your awareness clicks, the hierarchy flips. They're not observing anymore. They're exposed. They're not studying anymore. They're being dissected. They're not in control anymore. They're reacting. And here's one last truth that hits like a blade. You didn't keep score to win against them. You kept score to understand them. And understanding your enemy is the most terrifying thing you can ever do. They thought you were silent because you were weak. You were silent because you were watching. They thought you didn't notice. You noticed everything. They thought they were scoring points. You were writing the entire playbook. And now they realize the worst possible truth. You weren't the subject. You were the analyst. You were the anomaly. You were the one they should have feared from the start. You kept score. And that's why you hold all the power. Now, number 3, their entire operation just imploded. And you didn't even break a sweat. Funny how their control system lasted years, then one smile from you made the whole thing collapse like a cheap tent in a storm. You were literally the scenario they prayed the universe would never allow. The nightmare they tried to avoid, the glitch they hoped wouldn't evolve into a virus. They wanted you confused, compliant, predictable, easy to predict, and easier to manipulate. Instead, you became the one thing their system was never built to handle. Someone who knows. Someone who sees. Someone who laughs at the shadows instead of running from them. Someone who treats surveillance like a low-budget reality show. And the moment you smiled back at the watchers, their entire infrastructure crumbled under its own arrogance. They thought you'd run. You stayed. They thought you'd hide. You stepped into the spotlight. They thought you'd shrink. You expanded. You weaponized their attention without even trying. You made their obsession lose oxygen. You turned their monitoring into a stage performance where they accidentally became the clowns. And the worst part for them, you didn't even need to do anything dramatic. You didn't scream. You didn't expose anyone. You didn't retaliate. You simply acknowledged their existence with a smile warm enough to melt their illusion and cold enough to freeze their confidence. That smile was a system override, a manual reset of every lie they built, every tactic they rehearsed, every false sense of control they thought they had over you. Let's break this down the way they never wanted it broken down. Surveillance only works if the subject doesn't know. Observation only works if the target stays unaware. Control only works if you accept the position they put you in. But the moment awareness truly hits, the whole operation collapses. Awareness is the nuclear button. Awareness rewrites power. Awareness flips hierarchy. Awareness shatters illusions. Awareness is lethal. And you woke up fully charged. Maybe you're asking yourself, did I really cause all this with one smile? Was it really that serious? Why are they reacting like I detonated something? Here's why. Your smile wasn't casual. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't polite. It was a signal. It was the equivalent of pulling the fire alarm in their mental control room. Their entire system was built on the belief that you would never notice, that you would never look up, that you would never catch the pattern, that you would never sense the monitoring, that you would never understand how much they depended on you staying small. When you smiled, you didn't just acknowledge them, you exposed them. You stripped them naked in the middle of their own strategy. You caught the puppeteers with the strings in their hands. You saw the watchers behind the glass. You made their hidden power visible, which instantly made it worthless. Imagine this, a master magician who gets exposed mid-performance. The moment the audience realizes how the trick works, the trick dies. That's what your awareness did to them. It made their entire act pointless. Imagine this, a hacker who thinks he's invisible until the system he's infiltrating suddenly says, "Welcome back, user," while locking him out of his own plan. Imagine this, a predator stalking prey through the forest until the prey suddenly turns around, looks him dead in the eyes, and smirks. The predator instantly becomes the one being hunted. That's the hierarchy collapse they're experiencing. Imagine this, a group of people gossiping about someone behind their back only for that person to walk in, take a seat, and say, "Continue." That's what your smile did. It ended the illusion. It ended the distance. It ended the secrecy. They didn't expect that. They didn't prepare for that. Their whole system was built on the assumption that you'd keep giving them the benefit of the doubt, that you'd keep pretending not to notice, that your kindness would blind you, that your patience would silence you, that your empathy would distract you, but the universe sharpened you in silence. You didn't stay soft, you evolved. You didn't stay naive, you woke up. You didn't stay manageable, you became untouchable. Now they're scrambling for explanations, scrambling for excuses, scrambling to regain a control they never actually had. You became a counterintelligence anomaly without even trying. They wanted a subject. They ended up with a strategist. They wanted a predictable mind. They ended up with an intuitive disruptor. They wanted a docile target. They ended up with someone they can't categorize, can't read, can't anticipate. You flipped the lens. You turned their surveillance into performance art. You made them the entertainment. And the more they watch, the more exposed they feel. Let's talk about collapse. Real collapse. Collapse doesn't always look explosive. Sometimes it looks like panic behind stoic faces. Sometimes it looks like paranoia disguised as curiosity. Sometimes it looks like watchers suddenly afraid to be seen. Sometimes it looks like people avoiding your gaze because they don't know what you've figured out. You notice the shift, didn't you? The way they act different now. The way they avoid eye contact. The way they get weirdly still when you enter a room. The way conversations change the moment you show up. The way people who once acted unbothered suddenly treat you like a threat. It's not imagination, it's collapse. It's the aftermath of being exposed by the one person they never expected to wake up. And here's the quote they deserve to choke on. Awareness didn't just ruin their system. It erased their advantage. But let's push deeper, chosen one, because this part matters. Collapse happens when truth enters a space built on lies. Collapse happens when a chosen one realizes their intuition was never paranoia. It was warning. Collapse happens when you finally understand the role you were supposed to play versus the role they tried to keep you in. Let me answer. Another question you might be thinking. Why did the system fall apart so fast? Because their power was never real. It was borrowed, temporary, dependent on your silence, dependent on your confusion, dependent on your humility. The moment you chose awareness over acceptance, they lost everything. Their confidence gone, their control shattered, their secrecy exposed, their illusion dead. You are the system breaker. You are the unexpected variable. You are the anomaly they didn't program for. You are the glitch that became the upgrade. And here's the poetic justice of it all. They spent years building a structure around you, thinking it would keep you contained. But the walls they built only ended up trapping them. The surveillance they used to study you became the mirrors that exposed them. The stage they forced you to stand on became the spotlight that burned them. Because awareness ruins everything, and you, chosen one, woke up with eyes that see through every mask, every tactic, every fake gesture. You smiled and the entire system collapsed. Not because you tried to destroy it, but because truth destroys anything built on lies. Their operation is gone. Their illusion is gone. Their power is gone. You didn't just break the system, you replaced it. Number 4, the moment you started laughing, their whole operation went into cardiac arrest. Nothing terrifies an enemy more than a chosen one who should be broken, but is laughing instead. You didn't just wake up. You didn't just become aware. You evolved into something they never prepared for. Someone who finds their entire scheme funny. And that right there is the death blow. They can manage anger. They can predict rage. They can contain frustration. Those emotions follow patterns. They know how to respond to someone who snaps, cries, yells, or storms out. But amusement, a smile, a smirk, that soft exhale that says, "Wow, this is all you had." That breaks them in ways no confrontation ever could. Because amusement is the declaration of a higher vantage point. Amusement means you see everything. Amusement means you're not threatened. Amusement means you already know how this story ends. And it doesn't end with them winning. Let's really break their ribs with this truth. They're talking about you right now in a room with no windows. At a table they suddenly wish was longer, scrubbing through memories like it's surveillance footage, trying desperately to pinpoint the exact second you figured them out. They're pausing moments in their mind, replaying conversations, analyzing your past reactions like archaeologists dusting bones. They want to know where they slipped, where they exposed themselves, where the subject unaware became the anomaly. They can't find it because there wasn't one moment. Your awareness didn't explode, it accumulated, it stacked, it layered. It grew over time like a storm they didn't see on the radar because it was building underneath their feet. You woke up the way dawn happens. Quietly, gradually, then suddenly blinding. By the time they realized you were no longer asleep, you'd already seen too much. And instead of panicking, you smiled. Maybe you're wondering now, why does my amusement scare them so much? Why do they glitch when I stay calm? Why is my smirk more threatening than my anger? Here's why. Anger reacts. Amusement observes. Anger fights. Amusement calculates. Anger shows emotion. Amusement shows dominance. When you're angry, they know what to prepare for. When you're amused, you force them to ask questions they can't answer. Imagine this. A thief breaks into a house expecting fear, chaos, screams. But the homeowner steps out from the dark hallway, smiling, not yelling, not panicking, just smiling like they've been expecting this. The thief's entire nervous system collapses instantly. That's your energy. Now, imagine this. A chess opponent thinks they've trapped you. They're waiting for you to panic. Instead, you lean back, grin, and say, "Are you sure about that?" Suddenly, they start questioning the move they were so proud of. That's what your amusement does. It rewires their confidence. Imagine this. You're walking through a dream that slowly reveals itself as a nightmare. But instead of running, you start rearranging the furniture, adjusting the lighting, picking out better colors. They don't know what to do with someone who redecorates the darkness because your transformation wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was subtle. It was steady. It was a slow rotation of the mind. A shift in perception. A clarity you grew into, not stumbled upon. Every time they tried something manipulative, you noted it. Every time they coordinated a setup, you filed it away. Every time they mirrored your behavior, you cataloged it in silence. And somewhere between the 10th fake coincidence and the 20th recycled tactic, you stopped being bothered and started being entertained. They don't fear your anger, they fear your evolution. Your amusement is their apocalypse because it sends one message louder than any shout ever could. You're not on my level anymore. Let's talk about those emergency meetings happening in their heads or in real life right now. They're discussing the anomaly. They're discussing the glitch. They're discussing the moment their careful surveillance turned into a circus with them as the clowns and you as the spectator. They're whispering, when did they figure it out? Did I say too much? Did they notice that look? Did they hear that tone? Have they been watching us the whole time? Spoiler, yes. And here's the part that turns their spine into dust. Your amusement proves you've already accepted the truth. You're not stuck in confusion anymore. You're not second-guessing your intuition. You're not questioning your perception. You're certain now, and certainty is lethal. Most people crumble when they wake up inside a nightmare. But not you. You became interior design for chaos. You rearranged the fear. You repurposed the darkness. You repainted the walls. You turned the entire nightmare into a throne room. Your amusement is the crown. Let me drop a few quotes. They deserve to feel like a punch to the throat. Your smile wasn't a reaction. It was a diagnosis. Your calm didn't soothe them. It sentenced them. You didn't expose them. You let them expose themselves. Your amusement is the proof that you won before the game even started. But let's go even deeper into the psychology here. When you smile at someone who expected you to break, you force them to confront a version of you they never prepared for. They studied the old you. They designed their system around the old you. They strategized for the old you, the patient you, the quiet you, the forgiving you, the emotionally generous you. They never prepared for the version of you who has nothing left to lose and no illusions left to maintain. You want the truth they're choking on right now. You didn't just wake up. You upgraded. Your intuition evolved. Your perception sharpened. Your spirit hardened. Your boundaries crystallized. Your patience turned into intelligence. Your silence turned into surveillance. And when all of that snapped into place, amusement became your natural response. Not because you don't care, but because you care in a different way now, strategically, selectively, intelligently. Amusement is the reaction of someone who finally sees the full board. Amusement is the weapon of someone who has already outgrown the threat. Amusement is the posture of someone who steps into the nightmare and says, "This is my room." Now, let me answer one last question you might be thinking. Why does my calmness bother them more than my anger ever did? Because anger means you're still emotionally involved. Amusement means you're emotionally untouchable. Anger means you're still playing their game. Amusement means you've walked off the field. Anger means they can still influence you. Amusement means they never will again. And here's the brutal truth. People fear losing power, but they fear irrelevance even more. Your amusement made them irrelevant. They've become background noise, static clutter, outdated programming you no longer run. You didn't just step out of their control. You stepped out of their jurisdiction. Your awareness woke you up. Your amusement crowned you. And that chosen one is why they tremble. Number 5. When their leash snaps and you keep walking. They didn't lose control because you fought back. They lost control because you stopped playing. Control doesn't explode. It fails quietly, pathetically. And that's exactly what's happening now. Their surveillance isn't strategy anymore. It's desperation dressed in protocol. They're scrambling, panicking, glitching, trying to figure out how you broke free without taking a single step. How you slipped out of their grip while standing in the same exact spot. You didn't run. You didn't rebel. You didn't argue. You simply stopped caring. And that was the kill shot. Their entire system depended on you believing in its power. The moment you stopped believing, it collapsed like a cardboard fortress in the rain. Now look at them. Meetings getting longer, reports getting frantic, analysts sweating through their shirts trying to identify the trigger event. But the truth is unbearable for them. There was no trigger event. You outgrew the cage. You outgrew the fear. You outgrew the illusion. Imagine a bird whose cage door has been open the whole time. But the moment it realizes that, the cage becomes irrelevant. That's you. And they don't know how to recapture something that no longer sees the bars. You might wonder, are they really this scared of me not caring? Yes, because indifference is uncontainable. Indifference means you don't respond to manipulation. You don't react to intimidation. You don't feed their system. You exist outside their design. You turned your cage into a stage and they can't handle it. They wanted compliance. They got performance. They wanted a subject. They got a sovereign. They wanted a predictable pattern. You turned into abstract art. Here's the quote they deserve to choke on. You can't trap someone who realized the door was never locked. Control failed. You didn't break free. You outgrew the chains. And now they're stuck studying the ghost of a power they never actually had. Number 6. When their reasoning breaks and you keep laughing. Nothing shatters an enemy faster than realizing the harder they push, the more unstoppable you become. This is where their whole worldview starts eating itself alive. Every attempt to control you is backfiring. Every tactic strengthens you. Every observation empowers you. You're not resisting their pressure. You're absorbing it, converting their obsession into momentum. You drag them off their neat little script into full-blown improvisation. And the comedy is they were never trained for this. They know how to handle patterns, not paradoxes. They know how to contain rebellion, not amusement. They don't know how to fight someone who looks at their threats and genuinely finds them entertaining. They expected you to react. You didn't. They expected you to panic. You smiled. They expected you to collapse. You got stronger. And now their logic is collapsing like cheap scaffolding. Their systems contradict themselves. Their manuals don't apply. Their rules don't fit. Their analysts are losing sleep because nothing about you follows the physics they memorized. Their control models read like broken code. Their predictions fail before they're even written. Imagine this. A firefighter trained to put out flames suddenly confronted with smoke that laughs and moves around him. How does he fight it? How does he categorize it? How does he file something that isn't solid, isn't still, isn't afraid? That's you. Your smoke with a sense of humor, your laughter wearing a crown. How do you classify smoke? You don't. You watch it rewrite the room. How do you file laughter? You can't. It slips through every folder, every definition, every boundary. They wanted someone logical, predictable, measurable. Instead, they got someone elemental, someone who doesn't react, someone who transforms. Their logic collapses because you're no longer a part of their system. You're the anomaly dissolving it. And the funniest part, they can't stop watching. Even as everything breaks, you're still the only thing that makes sense to them. Number 7. When the other awakened, failed, and you kept rising. They handled the others because the others broke, but you didn't break. You blinked, smirked, and asked for the next level. You're not the first person who ever noticed the watchers. Plenty of people caught glimpses, felt the pressure, saw the patterns. But the moment awareness touched their minds, panic swallowed them whole. They reacted exactly the way the system likes, fearfully, predictably, irrationally, easy to redirect, easy to neutralize, easy to file away as false alarm. They were manageable because they folded. You didn't fold. You didn't panic. You didn't freeze. You got curious. And curiosity is a weapon no system is built to survive. Curiosity asks the questions they spend millions trying to bury. Why so many watchers? What are you protecting? What threat did you imagine that required this much surveillance? What are you afraid I'll realize? Those questions alone shattered their blueprint. Fear can be controlled. Curiosity cannot. Curiosity wanders. Curiosity observes. Curiosity connects dots. Curiosity turns a spotlight onto secrets they were hoping would stay in the dark. And the more freely you act, walking, laughing, living without the invisible chains they designed for you, the more the watchers realize something horrifying. They're guarding nothing, watching nothing, protecting nothing, chasing nothing, inventing threats in empty air. You didn't just break their system, you exposed its irrelevance. Imagine a guard dog suddenly realizing the house has no owner. Imagine a security team discovering the vault they're sworn to protect is empty. Imagine a full surveillance unit watching someone who doesn't need to be contained. Their structure dissolves in real time because nothing scares a system more than realizing its enemy isn't resisting. They're observing and laughing. Awareness alone is destabilizing. Awareness plus amusement. That's system failure. And you chosen one or the equation they can't solve and the outcome they can't stop. Number 8. When their control becomes your stage play and they're forced to applaud. They wanted transparency, so you handed it to them like a gift-wrapped bomb. This is the part where your evolution stops being subtle and becomes theatrical. You've started testing the boundaries, poking at their nerves, tapping the glass just to watch them flinch. You talk about surveillance to people who swear they're innocent. And the way they sweat, stutter, or suddenly remember an appointment tells you everything. You dance around the truth without ever naming it. The most lethal kind of honesty. And it sends ripples of panic straight through their system. Because you didn't expose them. You hinted, you implied, you insinuated, and implication is deadlier than accusation. They wanted control. You gave them transparency, but on your terms, not theirs. You're the one choosing what to reveal, how much to reveal, and when to reveal it. Every gesture, every comment, every intentional half-truth becomes part of the performance. They're forced to watch. Congratulations. You turned their mission into collaborative theater and they didn't even realize they were cast as the supporting characters. Imagine this. You casually mention feeling observed to someone who is observing you and they choke on their own breath. Imagine dropping a cryptic line like funny how patterns repeat and watching someone's pupils dilate like they heard a confession. Imagine talking about cameras in a room where a hidden one is actually recording and you stare right through the wall it's behind. That isn't coincidence. That's choreography. And here's the part that melts their logic into sludge. They can't stop watching you perform the very destruction of their illusion. They must observe you tearing down the stage they built. They must witness the collapse they can't prevent. They must stare at the chosen one turning their control system into improv theater. You're performing not for them but at them. Your existence is the show. Their panic is the soundtrack. Your awareness is the script and the cruelest truth. They can't look away. Not now. Not after everything you've revealed without revealing anything. You became the actor, the director, and the demolition crew all in one. In their front row strapped in, sweating through their clothes while the illusion they built burns on stage. This isn't surveillance anymore. This is theater. And you're the star. Number 9. When you stop being the subject and become their reflection, they weren't destroyed by what you knew. They were destroyed by seeing themselves in your eyes. You're far past anomaly territory now. Anomalies can be studied. Anomalies can be filed, measured, boxed, tagged, controlled. But a mirror forces the watcher to face themselves. A mirror turns the system inward. A mirror becomes the enemy they can't escape. And that's exactly what you've become. The perfect reflection of their own fear, staring back at them with that slow, confident grin that says, I see you. All of you. You're not reacting to them anymore. You're reflecting them. Their tension becomes your calm. Their panic becomes your amusement. Their questions become your silence. Their fear becomes your fuel. And the sickest part for them, you didn't even try. You didn't evolve into some mythical threat. You simply removed the blindfold and the system collapsed under the weight of its own reflection. They're not terrified of you. They're terrified of what they see when you look back. Imagine this. A watcher reviews footage expecting compliance and sees a smile that wasn't supposed to exist. A smile that knows. A smile that remembers. A smile that reflects every tactic, every pattern, every failed attempt at control. That footage becomes a haunting, a glitch burned into their screens like a ghost that refuses to fade. Your smile lives in their systems now. A permanent sigil stamped onto their memory. A warning, a diagnosis, a prophecy. You can delete a file. You can't delete a mirror. They try to categorize you, but how do you measure pure awareness? How do you file a phenomenon? How do you define someone who reacts to observation by amplifying it back like a spotlight? You've become the reflection eating them alive. Their gaze turned against them. Their tactics collapsing under the weight of your existence. You are the glitch they can't patch. The laugh that echoes through security feeds long after the watchers stop watching. They wanted you unaware. Instead, you became unforgettable. And now we've reached the part they never wanted you to understand. The moment you step out of their story and into your own, everything they built to contain you has turned into evidence of your evolution. You're not the watched anymore. You're the force that rewrote the entire script. If this hit you the way it was meant to, strengthen the signal. Like the video, subscribe to the mission, drop 777 in the comments, and share this with another chosen one who's waking up. Let the system feel the echo of your awareness spreading.